Your blood type isn't random. It's a genetic time capsule. Deep in your DNA lies evidence of ancient plagues, migrations that happened tens of thousands of years ago, and battles your ancestors fought against diseases you'll never face. And when scientists decoded the blood of people who died 46,000 years ago, they found something that rewrites everything we thought we knew about human evolution. But here's where it gets interesting. You've probably seen the viral headline making waves across social media. It says, something shocking. O plus blood was never African. DNA has finally exposed what's been hidden for centuries. The headline screams, conspiracy, hidden truths and secrets buried by science. But like so many viral claims that grab our attention, this one gets the story completely backwards. The actual truth is far more fascinating than any conspiracy theory could ever be. It's a story written in your cells, encoded in every drop of blood in your veins, and it tells the epic journey of human survival itself. When you really think about what your blood type represents, you're looking at millions of years of human history condensed into a simple 4-letter designation. O positive, A negative, B positive, AB negative. These simple labels mask an incredibly complex biological narrative. They represent countless generations of survival, adaptation, and evolution. They represent your ancestors, making it through diseases that killed millions of others. They represent your family line, succeeding where other family lines failed. Your blood type is living proof that your ancestors survived. And that's the real story here. Not conspiracy, not hidden truths, but genuine, profound connection to human history itself. And let's start by understanding what the viral claim is actually saying and why it's wrong. The headline suggests that type O blood, the most common blood type in the world, somehow didn't originate in Africa. It implies that scientists have been hiding this truth, that mainstream science got it wrong, and that DNA evidence recently proved something revolutionary. But here's the problem with that narrative. The scientific evidence shows the exact opposite. Type O blood did originate in Africa. Not only that, it's one of humanity's oldest blood types, shaped by millions of years of evolutionary pressure against one of Africa's deadliest diseases. Researchers have known this for decades. It's not new information. It's not a hidden conspiracy. It's straightforward evolutionary biology that fits perfectly with what we know about human migration, disease pressure, and natural selection. The evidence has been published openly in scientific journals, accessible to anyone with internet access. So what's really happening here? Why would someone create a headline that completely inverts the facts? Usually it's because the actual science is less sensational, but infinitely more interesting. The real narrative of blood. Type evolution is gripping all on its own if you just take the time to understand it. There's no need for lies when the truth is this compelling. And once you understand the real story, you'll realize you don't need conspiracy theories to make blood type evolution fascinating. The true narrative is gripping, it's evidence-based, and it tells us profound things about who we are and where we come from. Let's talk about what science actually reveals about blood type O and its African origins. Blood types aren't just labels we slap on blood for medical purposes. They're genetic signatures. They're ancient adaptations written into our cellular machinery. On the surface of every red blood cell in your body, there are proteins called antigens. These antigens are like identification badges. Your immune system uses them to recognize what belongs in your body and what's an invader. Different blood types have different combinations of these antigens. Type O blood is unique because it has neither A nor B antigens. Instead, it has what researchers call the H antigen. This seemingly simple difference actually tells a story of survival spanning countless thousands of years. Tens of thousands of years ago in Africa, human populations faced an enemy more deadly than any predator: malaria. Specifically, a strain called Plasmodium falciparum, one of the most vicious parasitic diseases ever to afflict humanity. This parasite has killed more humans throughout recorded history than any other single disease agent. It spreads through mosquitoes, infects the liver, then invades red blood cells, and can cause death within days of infection. But here's the thing about malaria and blood types. The parasite needs to attach to the red blood cell surface to invade it. It needs to latch onto specific markers, specific chemical structures on the cell surface. If your blood type makes that attachment harder or even impossible, you have an advantage. You have what evolutionary biologists call a selective advantage. Scientists have documented for decades that people with type O blood have a malaria parasite that has difficulty attaching to their red blood cells. The specific antigens on type O cells create a biological barrier to infection. This isn't new research. This isn't hidden knowledge. This is standard evolutionary biology taught in universities worldwide. Over thousands of years, in regions where malaria was endemic, where it appeared every year and killed a significant percentage of the population, natural selection favored people with type O blood. When a disease kills a significant portion of a population every year, The survivors tend to be those whose biology resisted it best. Their children inherited that resistance. Across generations, sometimes spanning centuries, type O blood became more common in these regions. This is how evolution works at the most fundamental level. This is how humans survived in Africa long before they ever left the continent. The evidence for this is overwhelming and comes from multiple sources. Researchers have studied it extensively over many decades. Modern populations in sub-Saharan Africa, where malaria remains endemic today, still show the highest rates of type O blood in the world. This pattern is consistent, repeatable, and explainable through basic evolutionary theory. This isn't controversial. This isn't new. This is basic biology, confirmed repeatedly across decades of rigorous research. But the story of blood type evolution gets even more interesting once humans began migrating out of Africa. About 70,000 to 50,000 years ago, groups of anatomically modern humans left Africa and spread across the rest of the world. This wasn't a single migration. It wasn't a coordinated movement. It was a gradual expansion, with groups moving in different directions at different times, facing different challenges. When these groups left Africa, they carried their genetic heritage with them. They carried the blood types that had worked so well against African diseases. But as they moved into new environments, they encountered new pathogens. Different regions had different disease ecosystems. The Middle East had different disease pressures than Southeast Asia. Europe had different challenges than Australia. Over time, measured in thousands of years, natural selection began shaping different blood type frequencies in these different populations. Mutations that arose randomly sometimes provided advantages in these new environments and spread through populations. Other mutations disappeared because they offered no advantage or actually harmed survival prospects. Here's where the Persian Plateau comes into the story. Archaeologists have long noted that early humans migrating out of Africa seemed to pause in certain regions before continuing their spread across continents. One of the most significant pauses appears to have occurred on the Persian Plateau, the high mountainous region between the Zagros Mountains in Iran. Evidence from archaeological sites suggests that human populations remained there for approximately 15,000 years. That's a long time in evolutionary terms. That's multiple hundreds of generations. That's long enough for genetic changes to accumulate. Mutations that occur randomly in individuals can spread through an isolated population if they provide advantages. Researchers now believe that during this 15,000-year pause, isolated human populations experienced different disease pressures and began developing new genetic variations in their blood type systems. Mutations that would never have been advantageous in Africa might suddenly become beneficial in these new environments. These mutations could spread through the population because they conferred survival advantages against local pathogens. This period became what researchers now call a genetic incubator. The Persian Plateau was a crucible where new blood types literally evolved through natural selection and genetic drift. The scientific study that uncovered this evidence examined the DNA of 22 modern humans who lived between 46,000 and 16,500 years ago, along with 14 Neanderthals and one Denisovan Neanderthal hybrid. Researchers at institutions like Aix-Marseille University in France sequenced their genomes and specifically analyzed their blood group genes with extreme precision. What they found was remarkable and consistent with evolutionary theory. The blood group alleles that modern humans carried as they spread out of Africa were different from what we find in most people today. More specifically, they found that certain blood type variations that are now exclusive to non-African populations appear to have evolved right after humans left Africa, sometime between 70,000 and 45,000 years ago. This wasn't contamination. This wasn't unknown mixtures with other populations. This was genetic change happening in real time, documented by ancient DNA extracted from human remains buried for tens of thousands of years. Let's take a moment to understand what this actually means for human evolutionary history. When humans left Africa, they left with one set of blood type genes reflecting their African ancestry. As they stopped in places like the Persian Plateau, encountered different diseases, and adapted to new environments, their blood types changed. New mutations emerged spontaneously in individual people. Some spread through populations because they were beneficial. Others disappeared because they weren't advantageous or were neutral. By the time humans had spread across Eurasia and eventually reached the Americas, populations had developed blood type frequencies that look quite different from African populations. This is textbook evolution operating exactly as evolutionary theory predicts. This is natural selection playing out over tens of thousands of years. And this is exactly what we would expect to see if we looked at human migration and adaptation across global scales. Now let's talk about the role of disease in shaping these blood types and causing the diversity we see today. Type O blood's advantage against malaria is well documented, but that advantage comes with a cost in different environments. People with type O blood face greater risk from cholera, an acute infectious disease caused by bacteria that causes severe dehydration and can kill within hours. This is another ancient disease that has killed millions throughout human history. Different regions had different disease profiles. In areas where cholera was more prevalent, you might see different blood type frequencies than in areas where malaria dominated. In regions where malaria was the primary killer, type O blood remained advantageous and was maintained by natural selection. In regions where cholera was more common, different blood type frequencies might have been selected for. This is how evolutionary pressure works. It's not about any one blood type being universally superior or inferior. It's about which blood type is best suited to the specific disease pressures and environmental challenges of a particular region at a particular time in human history. Consider what happened as humans spread across different continents and encountered unique disease environments. Populations in East Asia developed certain blood type frequencies. Populations in Europe developed different patterns reflecting their unique evolutionary history. Populations in the Americas, having migrated across Beringia and then spreading throughout North and South America, experienced yet another genetic incubator period and diverged even further from their Asian ancestors. Indigenous Australian and Pacific Islander populations developed their own unique blood type profiles reflecting tens of thousands of years of isolation and adaptation. Every major human population shows slightly different frequencies of different blood types because every population faced different diseases, different environmental pressures, and different selective forces. This is why blood type distribution varies so much by region even today. This is why understanding blood type geography tells us about human history. Modern research shows that sub-Saharan African populations have an Rh positive factor frequency of 97 to 99%. That's the highest in the world and reflects the long history of these populations in African environments. East Asian populations show Rh positive frequencies of 93 to 97%, reflecting their evolutionary history in Asian environments. European populations show different patterns reflecting their unique history. These aren't accidents. These aren't random variations. These are the fingerprints of millions of years of evolution and thousands of years of migration and adaptation. And the research that uncovered this pattern is published in peer-reviewed scientific journals. It's been replicated by independent researchers. It's been studied from multiple angles using different methodologies. It's not hidden. It's not controversial within the scientific community. It's just how human evolution works and how populations adapt to their environments. This brings us back to that viral headline and why it's so fundamentally backwards and misleading. The claim that O plus blood was never African directly contradicts the evidence from multiple independent sources. Type O blood evolved in Africa because it provided survival advantages against African diseases, particularly malaria. The evidence for this is stronger than the evidence for almost any other claim about blood type evolution. When scientists analyzed ancient DNA from humans who lived 46,000 years ago, they didn't find that type O blood appeared out of nowhere in Europe or Asia. They found that different blood type variations emerged in those populations after leaving Africa. Some of these new variations became more common in certain populations than type O. Others remained rare or disappeared entirely. But the evolutionary story is consistent and well documented across all the evidence. The viral headline also suggests that mainstream science has been hiding this information from the public. That's not supported by the evidence either. Research on blood type origins and distribution has been published continuously for decades in accessible scientific literature. Major scientific institutions like Stanford Blood Center, universities across Europe and America, and international research consortiums have all contributed to this body of knowledge. None of this research is secret. Most of it is freely available online through open access scientific databases that anyone can access. The information has never been hidden. It's just that the real story is more complex than a sensational headline can capture. Real evolutionary biology doesn't fit neatly into social media posts that grab attention. It requires context, understanding of disease pressure, knowledge of human migration patterns, and appreciation for how natural selection works over long time periods. Let's talk about what the ancient DNA analysis actually revealed in meticulous detail. The study examined blood group systems beyond just ABO. It looked at RH, Kell, Duffy, Kidd, MNS, Diego, H, Secreter, and Indian systems. This is important because it shows that blood type evolution is incredibly complex. ABO is just one blood group system. There are actually 47 different blood groups known to science, and they evolved through different mechanisms and different timescales. What researchers found was that while Neanderthals showed relatively consistent blood type alleles over more than 100,000 years, suggesting stable populations without intense natural selection on blood groups, modern humans showed rapid changes as they spread out of Africa. This suggests that the new environments humans encountered, with different disease pressures and climatic conditions, created strong selective forces favoring new blood type variations. Evolution was acting faster on blood types in human populations than it had been in Neanderthal populations for countless millennia. One particularly fascinating discovery involved a rare blood group called RHD Di type 4 variant. This variation originated in Neanderthals and made its way into modern human populations through interbreeding as humans migrated toward Southeast Asia more than 65,000 years ago. This is a remarkable finding because it shows that blood type evolution involved not just random mutations, but also genetic exchange between modern humans and archaic human populations. We didn't just evolve in isolation. We interbred with Neanderthals and Denisovans, our distant cousins who had already adapted to Eurasian environments for hundreds of thousands of years. Some of their genetic contributions, including blood type variations, persist in modern human populations today. This is why Aboriginal Australians and Papuans carry blood type variations that are otherwise extremely rare in human populations. Their ancestors encountered Neanderthals or related archaic humans tens of thousands of years ago, and genetic exchange occurred through interbreeding. The evidence is written in their DNA. Understanding Neanderthals' blood types was itself a major breakthrough in paleogenomics. For decades, scientists thought all Neanderthals had type O blood based on limited analysis, but more sophisticated genetic analysis using ancient DNA sequencing revealed that Neanderthals actually displayed the full range of ABO variability found in modern humans. They had type A, type B, and type O blood types, just like people today. They possessed various Rh alleles. Their blood type genetics were far more complex than previously realized. The fact that Neanderthals possessed ancestral blood group alleles that are now particularly common in African populations provides strong evidence that Neanderthals and Denisovans originated in Africa, despite having lived for hundreds of thousands of years in Eurasia before modern humans arrived. This genetic evidence aligns with fossil evidence and paleoanthropological findings. It all points to a consistent narrative of human evolution and migration confirmed by evidence from multiple independent sources. Now let's address why sensational headlines like the O+ claim attract so much attention online and spread so rapidly through social media. There's something compelling about the idea of hidden truth, of mainstream science getting it wrong, of DNA finally revealing what has been covered up. These narratives appeal to our sense that the world is more mysterious than we thought, that there are secrets being kept, that regular people can access truth that authorities want hidden. But here's the reality. Most conspiracy theories about science operate by selectively presenting facts or by inverting complex truths into simple false claims. The viral headline does exactly this. It takes a genuine scientific finding, the evolution of blood type variation in human populations, and inverts it. It claims that a blood type known to have evolved in Africa actually never evolved in Africa. It's a perfect inversion. It's designed to contradict what science says, but without requiring any evidence. It just asserts the opposite and lets people's natural skepticism of mainstream institutions do the work. The irony is that the actual science is infinitely more interesting than the fake conspiracy. The truth is that your blood type carries within it the evolutionary history of your ancestors. Every drop of blood in your veins tells a story of survival, migration, and adaptation. If you have type O blood, your ancestors benefited from resistance to malaria or lived in environments where type O provided advantages. If you have type A blood, you might carry adaptations related to agrarian societies and agricultural diseases. If you have type B blood, your lineage might trace back to populations in Central Asia or the Himalayas. These aren't trivial details. These are real connections to your ancestry, written in your biological code. These are genuine mysteries waiting to be understood. The study of blood types has actually solved real mysteries in forensic science, medicine, and genealogy. Before modern DNA testing, blood type analysis was one of the few tools available for paternity testing. Courts used it. Families used it to determine biological relationships. Genealogists used it to rule out possibilities in family trees. As DNA technology advanced, we could look back even further, examining the blood of people who died thousands of years ago. This has allowed us to trace human migration patterns, identify disease pressures, and understand how populations adapted to new environments. We can literally see evolution happening in the ancient genomes of our ancestors. We can trace human lineages across tens of thousands of years. That's profound. That's revolutionary. That's real science doing what science does best, revealing genuine mysteries about the natural world and how life has changed over time. Consider what the evidence actually tells us about human history in comprehensive detail. Modern humans evolved in Africa somewhere between 300,000 and 200,000 years ago. For most of human existence, all humans lived in Africa. During this entire period, their blood types evolved in response to African disease pressures and environmental challenges. Type O blood became common in certain regions because it provided resistance to malaria. Type A blood emerged at some point, possibly providing advantages in different African environments or in response to different diseases. Then, between 70,000 and 50,000 years ago, something fundamental changed. Groups began migrating out of Africa. This wasn't a sudden mass exodus. It was gradual expansion. Some groups went north through the Middle East and into Europe and Asia. Others went south and east into the Indian Ocean region and beyond. Each group carried African blood types with them, but each group also encountered new environments and new diseases. The Persian Plateau, that 15,000-year pause in human migration, becomes crucial to understanding blood type evolution. It wasn't just a geographical waypoint. It was a period of intensive adaptation. Populations remained relatively isolated from each other and from Africa. They encountered local pathogens that African populations had never seen. Mutations that arose in this environment could spread if they provided advantages against these new diseases. Some blood type alleles that evolved during this period would later spread into Europe as humans continued migrating. Others remained localized or disappeared entirely. By the time humans reached the Atlantic coast of Europe, the Mediterranean, the steppes of Central Asia, and eventually the coastlines of the Pacific Ocean, their blood types had diversified significantly from African populations. But they remained recognizable as human blood types, descended from African ancestors. This process didn't stop in ancient times. It continued through human history and still continues today, though less dramatically. As civilizations rose and fell, as trade routes opened and closed, as new diseases emerged and spread, blood type frequencies continued to shift gradually. The bubonic plague, measles, smallpox, and countless other diseases have all influenced blood type distributions throughout history. Even in modern times, with medical interventions preventing most infectious diseases from killing vast numbers, the legacy of millions of years of natural selection remains written in our blood. Every person carries within them a genetic inheritance shaped by countless survivors. The geographic distribution of blood types we see today is the direct result of this long and complex history. Sub-Saharan African populations maintain high frequencies of type O blood because malaria remains a significant challenge in many of these regions. This is where the blood type originated, where it was maintained through natural selection, and where it remains most common. European populations show different frequencies, reflecting their different evolutionary history in a completely different environment. East Asian populations show yet another pattern reflecting their unique path. Every major human population carries the fingerprints of its unique evolutionary journey. This is the real story. Understanding blood type evolution also helps us understand human genetic diversity more broadly. We know that humans are remarkably similar genetically. Any two humans share about 99.9% of their DNA, but that tiny 0.1% difference is where all human diversity lives. It's in that fraction of genetic variation that we see differences in blood types, skin color, height, disease resistance, and countless other traits. This genetic variation didn't arise randomly. It arose through natural selection responding to environmental pressures over countless generations. Each variation that persists in a population does so because it provided some advantage, either in the distant past or in more recent history. Blood types are just one visible window into this deeper story of human adaptation and evolution. So what do we take away from all of this? First, the viral headline claiming that O-positive blood was never African is demonstrably false. Type O blood originated in Africa, evolved there in response to disease pressure, and remains most common there today. This isn't controversial among scientists. This is supported by archaeological evidence, ancient DNA analysis, modern genetic research, and basic evolutionary theory. Second, the actual science is far more fascinating than any false conspiracy theory could be. Your blood type tells a genuine story about your ancestors, their migrations, their challenges, and their triumphs. Third, learning to recognize misleading claims about science requires understanding how the misinformation works. This headline inverts the truth. It claims the opposite of what evidence supports. It suggests hidden conspiracy without providing any credible evidence. It exploits natural skepticism of institutions without actually engaging with scientific evidence or sources. When you encounter sensational claims about science, it's worth asking yourself a few critical questions. What evidence supports this claim? Who are the sources making it? Are they peer-reviewed studies conducted by qualified researchers or social media posts from anonymous accounts? Does this claim contradict established scientific evidence? And if so, why would thousands of scientists across multiple countries and institutions be wrong about this? For the O blood claim, the answers are clear and unambiguous. There's no credible evidence supporting it. The sources are vague and often unidentified. There's no peer-reviewed research supporting the claim. The claim directly contradicts decades of well-documented science published in reputable journals, and there's no plausible reason why scientists would hide this information. Quite the opposite. Understanding blood type evolution is scientifically interesting and doesn't threaten any important institutions or beliefs. The real revolution in understanding blood types came not from hidden discoveries, but from advancing technology and scientific methodology. Ancient DNA analysis was impossible before genetic sequencing became available. We couldn't examine the blood of people who died 46,000 years ago. Malaria in Africa, or adapted to new environments after leaving Africa. If you have a different blood type, you carry a different legacy. Every single person alive today is descended from countless survivors. Every cell in your body represents successful adaptation to whatever environment your ancestors inhabited. Your blood type is just one visible marker of this deeper truth. Your entire genetic code is a record of survival and adaptation. And now, thanks to ancient DNA analysis and modern genetics, we can actually read that record. We can understand our own history. The viral headline claiming O+ blood was never African misses this entire profound truth. It tries to create mystery where there's actually transparency. It tries to suggest conspiracy where there's actually genuine scientific discovery and open publication. It tries to invert facts that are well established and widely understood. And in doing so, it detracts from the actual wonder of human evolutionary history. The real story of blood type origins and evolution is a story of human resilience, adaptation, and survival across continents and millennia. It's a story written in DNA and confirmed by evidence from multiple fields of science. It's a story that connects you directly to your ancestors and their struggles. That's not conspiracy. That's genuine human history. That's science at its best.